The Fall of the House of Usher is a story about grim reality and metaphysical fantasy. The author of this writing was Edgar Allan Poe, who was an American poet and writer who was born on January 19, 1809, and died on October 7, 1849, aged 40. Regarding Poe's masterpiece, this was The Raven. Other pieces were The Cask of Amontillado, The Mask of the Red Death, and The Telltale Heart. And in them, his writings were characterized of being macabre and always talked about death, regret, and lust of love, but also writing them in a gothic and dark writing style. Poe's motto was, "Never to suffer what never to have been blessed." His imaginative storytelling and tales of mystery and horror gave birth to the modern detective story, and some of them became literary classics. This reading has all the elements of quintessential Gothic tale: a haunted house, a pair of strange siblings, and a native narrator who enters the scene and only to be terrorized. The Fall of the House of Usher was first published in 1839. Gothic literature in response to Romanticism, originating in the 18th century in England, Gothic literature became an important and distinctive movement with particular themes, symbols, and style that have carried on these days: gloomy, set in castles and mansions, haunting figures like ghosts and the supernatural, symbols and colors like black and red. Post-Gothic style drew from many earlier elements and also incorporated aspects of loneliness, madness, and helplessness, and horror, all of which contrasted sharply with the ideals of Romanticism. Geographic location. The Fall of the House of Usher, with its dark yet mysterious chronicling of mental collapse, its startling imagery, and its horrific final, is today probably Poe's best known and most cherished story. The setting of The Fall of the House of Usher plays an integral part in the story because it establishes an atmosphere of dreariness, melancholy, and decay. This story takes place in the Usher family mansion, which is isolated and located in a singularly dreary tract of the country.
The main characters of the story are Roderick Usher, Madeline Usher, and unnamed narrator. Roderick Usher, the owner of the mansion and last male in the Usher line. Roderick functions as a doppelganger, or character double, of his twin sister Madeline. He represents the mind to her body and suffers from the mental counterpart of her physical illness. Educated man and intellectual. Avid reader and plays guitar, but despite his talent, almost his entire existence is consumed because of his mental illness, extremely sensitive to external stimulus. Madeline Usher, Roderick's twin sister and victim of catalepsy, a mysterious incapacitating illness, because the narrator is surprised to discover that Madeline is a twin. She signals the narrator's outside relationship to the House of Usher. Barely exists in the story. Her doctors don't know what is wrong with her, only that she has a catalepsy during which she gets completely rigid and does not react, almost as if she were dead. She acts almost as she were a ghost. Unnamed narrator. Roderick begs boyhood friend connect by Roderick during his emotional distress. The narrator knows little about the House of Usher, and he is the first outsider to visit the mansion in many years. Very little direct about himself, Roderick's childhood friend. The main themes of this reading are sanity versus insanity. This means the illness that the Usher had, deterioration, the house as well as the Usher health. Fantasy versus reality, the family home because the house was falling apart and shamed as it will collapse at any moment but staying intact for a lot of time. Death, decomposition, premature burial, coming back from death, and sorrow.
At the beginning of the story, the narrator explains that he is on his way to an old friend's house, And as he approached the home, he became unsettled by the darkness and gazing on his surroundings. The narrator continues to explain that he received a letter from his old friend Roderick Usher, inviting him to come for a visit. According to the letter, Roderick has suffered a mental disorder which oppresses him, so the narrator feels that he must visit the man is Usher and his sister Madeline, who live in the house that is creeping the narrator about the beginning of the story. And while he stands sort of hesitating to approach the house, he noted that the two Usher are the last in a long family heritage, and their death will be the end of the bloodline. As the narrator enters the isolated house, he finds both Roderick and his sister in a severe state of depression and both appear sick. The narrators try to make Roderick feel better, but he is unable. Roderick adds to the seemingly supernatural quality of the house by suggesting that the house itself might be making him sick. A few days later, Madeline dies and the narrator and Usher. As the narrator helps Roderick carry Madeline's body, he reflects on Madeline's pink cheeks and realizes that she and Roderick are twins. Roderick, who is saddened by the loss of his sister, spends days slipping into a sort of nervous depression. One night, when both men cannot sleep, Roderick finds that a brightly colored gas is glowing all around the house. In hopes of easing the creepy tension of the night, the two men sit and read Mattress by Sir Launcelot Canning, a medieval romance. This, however, doesn't help because they begin to hear strange noises. To make the scene even more sinister, Roderick admits that he's been hearing noises for days, and he's afraid that may have buried Madeline alive. In true pulp fashion, the wind from an oncoming storm dramatically blows up the door, and Madeline appears in the room, looking ghostly. She is about to make her way to Roderick, almost attacking him, but falls on him and dies. Roderick, realizing he's burying his sister alive, dies of shock. The house seems to react the loss of the twins and to begin to die, collapsing all around the dead brother and sister. The narrator barely escapes before the house Usher falls.
Literary devices in the fall of the House of Usher. Symbols. Eyes. Windows to the soul. They communicate the person's state. In the story, this alludes when the narrator says, "eyes like windows." The house represented Usher's and Roderick itself. At the beginning, the windows showed light, but when Madeline died, the house turned dark as well as Roderick's eyes because the lights disappeared. The House of Usher. The narrator tells during the story that the house represented the Usher family in everything. This house was falling apart as well as them, Roderick and Madeline. The house as well as them were enshrouded in melancholy. The house stands up for Roderick's man of personality. This is even clear when they both died. So does the house, because it collapsed. The waiter, personified stage of the haunted house. At the beginning, the waiter was calm, but after Madeline's death, the waiter turned to a strange and powerful storm. Reflect the spiritual turmoil of the characters. At the end, when they both died, the waiter turned normal again. Personification. Eyes like windows, giving the windows characteristic of human eyes. Imagery. The Lady Madeline passed slowly through the remote portion of the apartment, and without having noticed my presence, disappeared. A sensation of stupor oppressed me, and my eyes followed her retreating steps.